Each year, farmers all over the world lose millions of dollars to an adversary that moves with stealth, attacks in the darkness, and leaves behind a trail of devastation. These are not armies, they are not machines, they are wild boars, and in certain areas, they have evolved into an unstoppable force. However, in the agricultural lands of Brazil, something remarkable is unfolding. Farmers have adopted an age-old tactic, one that appears almost too straightforward to be effective. They are excavating trenches, vast defensive lines carved directly into the earth, and somehow, against all expectations, this is halting the incursion. So, how did an agricultural crisis transform into a battleground? And why are trenches of all things the solution? Let us unravel the narrative behind one of the most ingenious agricultural defenses of the modern era. Imagine this. A farmer in the southern part of Brazil awakens before sunrise, steps outside, and freezes. The cornfield that he planted 3 months ago is gone. Not harvested, but destroyed. Stalks are snapped like toothpicks, roots have been torn from the soil, and deep hoofprints are visible everywhere. This is not damage caused by weather or illness. It is the handiwork of wild boars, and the destruction occurred in a single night. For many decades, these animals were a minor annoyance. Now they have become an ecological catastrophe. In Brazil alone, wild boar populations have surged, spreading across states such as São Paulo, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. They reproduce rapidly, adapt swiftly, and fear virtually nothing. A single sow can produce up to 12 piglets in one litter, twice a year. Within a generation, a small group transforms into a herd. Within a few years, that herd escalates to hundreds. The damage they inflict is not confined to crops. Wild boars excavate pastures, contaminate water sources, and transmit diseases like swine fever and leptospirosis. They kill newborn livestock, dismantle irrigation systems, and even assault humans when cornered. Farmers attempted every possible measure to deter them. Electric fences were the initial form of defense, and for a period, they were successful. However, boars are intelligent. They learn to push debris against the wires, thereby shorting out the electrical current. Some even dug beneath the barriers. Others simply charged through, enduring the shock long enough to break through the fence entirely. Poison appeared to be the subsequent logical course of action, but it was accompanied by detrimental side effects. Non-target animals consumed the bait, pets perished, waterways became polluted, and the boars that managed to survive became more wary, proving more challenging to lure. Hunters were enlisted, sometimes equipped with rifles and night vision apparatus, tracking the animals through dense woodlands and open fields. This provided some assistance, but it proved insufficient. For every boar eliminated, 3 more seemed to emerge. It was at this juncture that some farmers in Brazil began to adopt a different mindset. What if the solution was not about stopping individual animals, but about constructing a barrier that they simply could not surmount? The concept of digging trenches was not novel. Military forces have employed defensive ditches for millennia. However, applying that principle to agriculture was a bold undertaking. The underlying logic, nonetheless, was sound. Wild boars are powerful, fast, and cunning, but they cannot leap like deer. They cannot climb like monkeys. And if you excavate a trench to a sufficient depth and width, they are unable to cross it. The initial farmers to implement this strategy were uncertain. Some of their neighbors mocked them, but within weeks the outcomes were self-evident. Fields enclosed by trenches remained undisturbed. Fields without them were utterly ruined. So, what is required to construct one of these defensive lines? Firstly, the trench must be deep. The most effective designs range from 1 to 1.5 meters in depth. This is approximately the height of an average person. The width is equally important. A trench narrower than 1 meter offers boars an opportunity to leap across. Wider than 1.5 meters, and they will not even attempt it. The walls must be steep, almost vertical. A sloped wall transforms into a ramp, and boars will ascend it. However, a sheer drop deters them completely. When a boar encounters a trench, it hesitates. It tests the edge. Occasionally, it attempts to jump, loses its footing, and tumbles into the depth. Once at the bottom, escape becomes virtually impossible. The animal scratches at the walls, seeking purchase, but finds none. Ultimately, it either remains trapped until farmers arrive or exhausts itself in its attempts to get out. Construction, however, is not straightforward. For smaller farms, a backhoe or excavator accomplishes the task. Operators mark the perimeter, then commence digging, piling the excavated soil along the inner edge to create an even more substantial barrier. On larger properties, the process becomes industrialized. Bulldozers clear vegetation, excavators carve the trench in lengthy, continuous sections, and dump trucks transport away the surplus earth. Some trenches extend for kilometers, forming a protective ring around entire estates. The cost per meter varies, but estimates place it at approximately $2 to $3. For a 5-kilometer perimeter, that amounts to $10,000 to $15,000, and that is solely for the excavation. Maintenance incurs additional expenses. In regions experiencing heavy rainfall, trenches erode and soil collapses inward, diminishing their depth and efficacy. Drainage channels must be installed to prevent water from accumulating. Retaining walls constructed from stone or reinforced concrete help stabilize the sides. Then there is the issue of safety. A trench deep enough to stop a boar is also deep enough to trap a tractor. Farmers must clearly mark the perimeter, install crossings at crucial points, and warn workers about the inherent danger. At night, without adequate lighting or signage, even experienced individuals can stumble into the ditch. Despite these challenges, the system proves effective. In São Paulo, one farmer reported zero crop loss after installing a 2-meter-deep trench around his cassava fields. Prior to these efforts, he was experiencing losses of approximately 30% of his harvest each season. In Paraná, another agricultural producer observed the impact over a time frame of 18 months. Sightings of wild boars decreased by 70%. Damage inflicted upon sugarcane fields diminished to almost zero. News of these successful strategies spread. Subsequently, entire communities began to organize the construction of trenches, connecting their properties to form a consolidated defense network. However, wild boars are not the sole challenge confronting Brazilian farmers. An additional creature, significantly more perilous, exists. It is known as the javaporco. This animal is a hybrid, resulting from the mating of wild boars with domestic pigs. These creatures possess the size and strength characteristic of farm hogs, combined with the aggression and intelligence of their wild counterparts. They are larger, heavier, and more difficult to manage. A fully grown javaporco can attain a weight exceeding 200 kilograms. They operate in groups, communicate through grunts and squeals, and orchestrate attacks in a manner akin to military units. When they enter a field, their destruction extends beyond mere consumption. They completely obliterate the crops. Corn stalks are trampled flat, and root vegetables are uprooted and consumed whole. Even livestock are not exempt from their attacks. Farmers have discovered the remains of newborn calves that have been torn apart, their carcasses left in the mud. In the face of javaporcos, even the most substantial trenches are subjected to a severe test. These hybrids possess sufficient power to claw their way up steep inclines if suitably motivated. Consequently, certain farmers implement a dual approach, constructing a second trench a few meters inside the initial one. While this may be considered excessive for ordinary wild boars, it is deemed essential when dealing with javaporcos. Other producers have explored alternative designs. Trenches with a V-shaped cross-section, for instance, render climbing even more challenging, causing the animal to slide back down each time it attempts to ascend. Trenches shaped like boxes with vertical walls, reinforced with steel or concrete, completely preclude any possibility of escape. These advanced constructions incur higher costs, sometimes ranging from $5 to $10 per meter, but in regions with a high level of risk, they prove to be worthwhile investments. Beyond Brazil, the crisis posed by wild boars is a global phenomenon. In the United States, their populations have surged across the southern states. Texas alone is estimated to be home to 2.5 million feral hogs. These animals inflict agricultural damage exceeding $50 million annually. In contrast to Brazil, American responses have heavily relied on technological solutions and aggressive measures. Helicopters patrol overhead, escorting herds, while sharpshooters, firing from open doors, eliminate dozens in a single aerial sortie. Although efficient, this approach is controversial. Animal rights organizations have voiced protests, and ecologists have issued warnings regarding unintended ecological consequences. Despite these efforts, the population continues to grow. Australia is confronting a comparable predicament. Wild pigs, descendants of animals introduced by European settlers, now inhabit both the outback and agricultural areas. Farmers in Australia employ a combination of strategies. Trap systems, baited with corn or grain, capture entire groups simultaneously. Specially bred hunting dogs track and corner the animals. Some landowners have even resorted to poisoning water sources, although this method is subject to stringent regulation and frequent criticism. Canada, notwithstanding its frigid climate, is not immune to this issue. Wild boars are prevalent in provinces such as Alberta and Saskatchewan, where they cause extensive damage to wheat fields and barley crops. In July of the previous year, hunters in Alberta successfully brought down a single boar that weighed over 500 kilograms. This represented a record, but not a cause for celebration. Rather, it served as a warning. Animals of such immense size are exceedingly difficult to manage using conventional methods. Canadian authorities have initiated coordinated eradication programs. Hunters are provided with specialized training that covers shooting in low-light conditions, tracking animals through snow, and managing the physical dangers posed by a charging wild boar. These are not casual weekend hunting excursions. The operations are conducted with a level of military precision. Quotas are established, typically ranging from 4 to 5 animals per hunter per day, to prevent overhunting while still effectively controlling the populations. However, the most efficacious tool in Canada's strategy is not firearms, it is traps. Specifically, drop-gate traps are employed. These devices are baited with corn and strategically placed in areas with high wild boar activity. They are monitored remotely. When a sufficient number of animals congregate inside the trap, the gate automatically closes. This method involves no noise, no pursuit, and poses no risk to humans. Solar panels power the system, and motion sensors detect activity, transmitting real-time updates to farmers' mobile devices via cameras. With a single signal, the trap is activated. In Alberta, these traps resulted in a 65% reduction in local wild boar populations within a mere 18 months. Certain regions have also explored sterilization as a method. This involves capturing male animals, performing the sterilization procedure, and then releasing them back into their natural habitat. This approach disrupts breeding cycles. While it is a slower process than hunting or trapping, it is considered humane and sustainable. The primary disadvantage is the expense, as each sterilization procedure incurs costs in the hundreds of dollars, and the results are not immediately apparent, taking years to manifest. For farmers who are experiencing significant financial losses each season, waiting is not a viable option. Consequently, for many, the amalgamation of trenches, traps, and controlled hunts remains the optimal strategy. Returning to Brazil, the trench-based defense continues to evolve. Engineers and agronomists are meticulously studying various designs, testing different materials, and developing standardized blueprints that farmers can adapt to their specific land conditions. Some are incorporating natural barriers by planting thorny shrubs along the edges of the trenches, thus creating an additional deterrent. Others are experimenting with technological solutions, installing motion-activated lights or alarms that are triggered when animals approach the protected areas. The ultimate objective is not merely to impede the wild boars, but to establish a system that requires minimal ongoing maintenance, incurs lower long-term costs, and safeguards crops without adversely impacting the broader ecosystem. Nevertheless, certain questions persist. What will transpire if the wild boar populations shift? If one area becomes impassable, will the herd simply migrate to less protected zones? Some experts advocate for regional cooperation, suggesting that entire districts should coordinate their efforts and establish interconnected trench networks designed to funnel the animals into designated areas. Within these controlled zones, hunters or trappers can manage the populations more effectively. This represents a colossal undertaking that necessitates governmental support, financial investment, and widespread community buy-in. However, in regions where the wild boar crisis has reached catastrophic proportions, this collaborative approach may prove to be the sole viable solution. For the present moment, the trenches stand as silent, motionless, and remarkably effective fortifications. They symbolize more than just a physical barrier against animal incursions. They embody human ingenuity and an unwavering refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming adversity. Every meter of earth excavated, every wall reinforced, and every crossing constructed serves as a testament to the resilience of those who are responsible for feeding the world. The farmers who dig these trenches are not to be characterized as warriors. Rather, they are protectors, safeguarding not only their individual livelihoods, but also the global food supply that reaches millions of tables. Therefore, the next time you partake in a meal, consider the silent battles that are waged to bring that food to your plate. The corn, the cassava, the wheat. None of it comes easily, and in locations such as Brazil, it is protected by something as straightforward and as ingenious as a trench in the ground. The conflict against wild boars is far from concluded. Populations continue to proliferate, new hybrids are emerging, and farmers, as they always have, adapt. This adaptation is their inherent nature. They do not relinquish their efforts. They excavate deeper, they strategize more intelligently, and they inevitably discover a method to achieve victory.